Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever the four of us find you. Welcome back to another episode of AI and You, and we are excited about this month's conversation. But I'm also a little bit sad because I know that we've got about an hour and a half, 3 hours, 10 hours of content, and 30 minutes to get it in. So let's jump right on into it. I'm joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Ben Blanquera. Ben, glad that you're here today. Thanks for being here. Rehgan, Avon, of course, with Women in Analytics, is here, and Brian Sampsel with the International Institute of Analytics. And we're here to talk about the most important part of your AI journey. It's the team. Rehgan, you've got some opinions about this, I'm thinking.
Definitely do. We spend a lot of time talking to organizations about the people. I've been saying that this has been a people challenge for, 8 years now. The technology obviously is advancing rapidly, but this is a people challenge. This is a major workforce transformation that's happening, and the people are going to be key.
Well, and it is absolutely a workforce challenge because this technology here to go sit in. It's not a new Dell server. It's not a new HP server. It's not a new feature from AWS or Amazon, Google, or whatever, any of them. What it ultimately is a thing that transformed every aspect of an organization. So it's training deep in the tech, and it's training in how does this change the everyday life. Ben, you're seeing this as well as you make the rounds. What are your thoughts here?
Well, as Rehgan said, at the end of the day, it's about the people. And as we talk to clients and customers, the first thing they ask us after we talk about technology and use cases is, so what is your training plan? I need to start getting my team members up to speed. Send me whatever you have, because I know that it's org change issue. It's about people. And what's interesting is, they've got folks already doing self-training. Right. Yeah. And so I think the challenge for a lot of organizations is how do you create a standard framework that everyone is using the same language within the organization? And
That's
so I
right.
think people are acknowledging, I can get trained on, there's a ton of online courses, and those are good, but that doesn't create a common language and vernacular in the organization.
That's right. And I do have to pause for a second because I'm so excited about the topic that I forgot some of the things that we need to cover in housekeeping. Welcome to the show, of course. But we would love to hear from you. I would love for you to be like Megan, who has already introduced herself in the chat from San Antonio, because as we have this conversation, we don't want to talk to you. We want to talk with you. So if you will introduce yourselves, then we'll know who we have here in the show. So I know that there's folks there's probably a couple from Ohio here who's being shy and hanging out in the background, but also from all around the world. So please introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you are. Now, Brian, over at IIA, International Institute of Analytics, imagine that this is one of the main conversations that you guys are having with folks, and that is not just how do we get great analytics or how do we pull the data together, but how do we train people in the data and how to use it and make a difference in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's what's interesting about this is it is training being up and down the org chart, right? It's everything from executives needing some education to the management to the individual contributors, and honestly, it's to the data and analytics teams as well, right? They're just upskilling that needs to be done there, right? If you think about the co-pilots and some of those tools, right? Like it's changing how we as data and analytics professionals have worked before. So lots of interest in training and also figuring out, where do we need to, where can we upskill, right? Where do we need to hire? What does that right mix look like? So it's an interesting time.
Now, Brian, you bring up a really interesting point. You say in your last comment that people are looking at how do we upskill and how do we hire. Now, in the topic of upskilling, Rehgan, you brought some news to us this morning, and I think it's pertinent that we stay as current as we can be. So why don't you introduce, and producer Daniel bring up the graphic that I've shared and tell us what's going on in the world of training.
Yeah, this is breaking news, right? Hot off the press. Accenture decided to acquire Udacity and doubled down on their investment. Now they've already pledged billions of dollars to this, being AI centric and providing solutions and workforce solutions for AI to their customers. This is just one more pillar that they have to offer. It's clear signal from them that these companies are asking for training. And, Julie, the CEO, had mentioned in the article in a couple of different places that it was a strategic initiative for them to bring in a platform like Udacity that can create and produce this skill gap assessment for organizations and where they need to start inserting new content and training materials. And she emphasizes the hands-on capabilities of the platform, which I think is really interesting. So we're obviously getting huge signal. I mean, enough for Accenture to acquire Udacity, which I think is pretty big. And I think it's pertinent for every leader out there to have a training plan in place and figure out who your partners are going to be for the workforce transformation that's about to happen.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible stuff. But let's, we said in the title of this that the most important aspect, and Dan, you can take that graphic off, please. The most important aspect of a success, get rid of all the graphics, please, is helping customers and companies build the right teams, because this is a technology that, as we mentioned before, doesn't just touch the techies back in the back room in IT. It impacts everyone. And so, first it gets into resourcing. So Rehgan, maybe I'm going to leave the mic with you for a second, and let's talk about the resourcing needs that a company has, and what are some of those different roles?
Yeah, I think when you think about it comprehensively, I know we touched on a little bit, we're talking about leadership C-suite like training. I've seen a lot of that. I've been pulled into a lot of executive briefings on what AI is and how they should think about it strategically. And the number one question I keep getting is around talent. Who do they need to hire? And I think one of the biggest components of this too is how far are you diving into AI? I keep thinking about the AI ecosystem of building and buying in this generative AI space as like, do I want to design and build engines? Do I want to assemble cars? Like, what part am I going to buy from a supplier and what part am I going to build? And you're going to staff your team to support those different components depending on how far and how deep you plan to go. And so do you need the $900,000 salary data scientist that Netflix is hiring? Probably not, if you're a large enterprise organization, because you're not in the business of building engines. You're in the business assembling specific vehicles for your company. And so I often tell these organizations to think, what IP are you going to start supplementing with AI? I mean, it's great to get co-pilots and help with operational efficiencies, and there's training for sure around that. But how is this going to touch the core of the company? And those are the big talent decisions that you should be making. In terms of the workforce transformation, every single person is going to need to get trained. We've been doing AI readiness and safety trainings for everyone with a laptop. This includes how, as a user, to leverage these things responsibly, just like you would cybersecurity training. So there's a whole slew of things out there. And, we definitely need to focus on upskilling our technical teams too. These data scientists who have been in the space for a long time, the developer ecosystem has changed and is changing rapidly. And if you plan on supplementing any of your data science work and machine learning efforts internally with generative AI, you have to stay fresh, up to speed on all of the developer tools and resources out there for you.
That is such a go ahead, Brian.
Sorry, I was going to say, totally agree with you, but it's kind of funny because it just feels like a minute ago, right? We're talking about data science and, we're getting that discipline rolling. And now we're already talking about how it's changing, right? It's just, this stuff is moving so fast.
It really doesn't. Brian, while you've got the mic, as you get in and start to work with companies, how do you help them assess where they are? Now, as Brian answers that question, folks, I would love to know, just go ahead and comment in whatever platform you're watching us on, how is your company handling, training and awareness as well? So let us know. We'd love to comment on that, on what you guys have to say. So Brian, back to you, assessments.
Yeah. I think, it's an interesting kind of, push and pull, right? In some instances, you've almost got to rein in the AI hype, right? And I've been surprised at seeing some of the people who get caught up in the hype, right? Of buying tools with an AI assistant in it or something, right? On the other hand, there's some companies that, I know they're dealing with, hey, our CEO or executive suite is out there saying we are AI first, and then you've got a legal and compliance team that is saying no, we can't do this, we're not ready, right? So I mean, it's an interesting world right now. So I think, you know, I loved Rehgan's advice and thoughts on, you know, trying to figure out where are you using, you know, what is your AI strategy, right? Is this something that you're really going to, you know, is this something you're going to try to optimize your existing processes with, right? Is this something you're going to really build a competitive advantage around? And how you come out on that really, I think, dictates, you know, the staffing you need, the approaches you take, your risk levels. But it's hard. And again, this is one too where it just feels like everybody in the org is talking about AI, right? And it's not isolated to here or there. I mean, it is all over the place. People who, you know, would not have been talking about technology a year or two ago are talking about AI.
I know. I'm even next month going to talk to a community group over at the local country club because they want to know what is this AI thing and why does it matter, which is going to be such a great visit. Now, Ben, I was going to ask you around some of the challenges in staffing, but let's tie that to Salima's comment, which keep them coming, Salima. Love your stuff, where she says information is a second language, data literacy is a differentiator. So when we think about, you know, getting out and resourcing teams and training teams, I think a big part of that challenge is to, one, you know, how do you get the data to the right place, but how do you turn it into a second language within an organization? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that CDOs for a long time have been sort of driving this notion of data literacy and data culture, and you know, this is not a new conversation, but it is a different language, and it's in many times, you know, it's not, you know, sexy, right? Data, right? That's unless you're a data geek, and which I like it, but now it's like with Gen AI, it has come mainstream. Right. And now, you know, that, you know, AI is, you know, everyone wants AI, but now that's a big driving force for, we better get some data literacy, because, you know, if you don't have good data, you can't do AI. And so I think this is like an incredible time for chief data officers and folks. Like, there's a lot of technical debt with data and data literacy, right? This becomes the great driving factor for, so when we talk about, you know, upskilling, there's like just this fundamental notion of sort of like the value chain, right, of data to insights to Gen AI, right? And I think it's an incredible opportunity for folks to create a new language. Just to me, this is every bit of, you know, it's every bit of going into a different country. And if you really want to be successful in a different country, then you better understand the language.
That's a really good point. And I love what Dan has to say. AI is in the air. I mean, it is sort of everywhere. But what's exciting is with a group like the three folks that I'm on with today, is these are folks who have been, you know, working in and around data for decades. Although you wouldn't believe it with Rehgan or Brian. They just look so young. Ben and I look old. But the data folks have been, I always say, they've been sitting in the corner, not been necessarily the cool kids in the room, but they've been here saying the data's got to be right. We need investment. Everyone has to get in. Look at all the power. And now that AI is here, it's the catalyst that have brought all of these conversations to the limelight. Now, the conversations aren't new, but the challenges now are real, because as there's now all this great push towards utilizing the tool in every single organization, you know, it drives and exposes this skills gap. Rackspace just did a bunch of research that we'll be releasing here in the next couple of weeks, but like 46% of companies are actively trying to solve this. It is a massive issue for these folks that we interviewed, and it was over 1,400 folks that we talked to. But what it ultimately drives is reskilling, drives us towards reskilling strategies. You know, Rehgan, in your conversations, you know, why reskilling? Why not just go find new people?
Yeah, I think one of the takeaways that I encourage the executives that I talk to have by the time we're done talking is that context is everything. And when I talk about context, I mean your business, your operations. Really, data is the best representation we can get of the process of the company that's happening. That's why it's unique to each company. That's why it's considered the differentiator. We are literally trying to represent what is happening operationally in information and model that and use that to make decisions and make changes. And this is in lies the problem, right? We're talking about the data here.
Yeah.
And so when you have someone who has 20 years of doing a process at a company, those people are very valuable. They have context. They have the nuances down. They have the things that the models are going to miss. And we need to retrain them to understand how to get augmented by these systems and how to help shape these systems to be productive for the company. So it's so important to keep those people core to the organization, keep them around, provide them with the necessary resources that they need to contribute to this conversation. I have this slide that's like the AI task force, right? And part of it is operations. You know, I saw Salima's comment about getting that middle to change. We've got the executives excited. We've got individual contributors excited. How do we get that middle, that frozen middle, I think she said, to change? And part of that is figuring out strategically, what are we trying to move with AI? What are we trying to augment, change? Think of it as decision support. And like I said, those people that have 20 years of experience in your company, keep those people. Have them help you shape these, AI systems inside of your organization, and have them help you figure out how to integrate it into the business.
Yeah, I just want to jump on that, Rehgan, because I think the other sort of component when we think about sustainability of organizations, part of it is that sustainability of our workforce, and or there's an implicit sort of belief that we have that says the best people you have, they're folks already here. You just got to invest in them a little bit, and so I agree, because they understand the context, they understand all the edge cases, right? And when you think about AI, that stuff, it'll kill you. Not the stuff in the middle. It's the edge cases that blow up, right? And so I think that becomes really the things to consider there.
That's right. And I'll just add one more thing too, because the people that are doing well with AI, they know what they want to get out of it. Mm-hmm. I always bring up the open-ended prompt. People are intimidated by that because they're like, what do I put in there? Right? It's the people that know what they want out of it that do really well. The people that are clever about, what do I want to accomplish with this, and how do I craft that, design it, and use this to do that. The people that are just like waiting for answers from these systems, they're not going to get anything valuable. So those are the difference in folks that are engaging with it.
Well, and forgive me if I insult anyone in the context of this next comment here, which is always sort of exciting when you lead with that. But I was talking to a good friend last week, and where the folks that I found who really excel in this space are those that know how to, using quotes here because it's like I'm talking to a 5-year-old, use their words. Think about the 5-year-old who's all worked up. They are so upset, and they can't express what's wrong with them because they're so upset. In your example, Rehgan, they're intimidated. They don't know what to do, necessarily what to fill in the blank with. Well, use your words. What are you trying to figure out? Put those words into that, and then change over time. You can't upset it. You can't upset the AI. You can't insult it, but you can ask it a second question or a third question if you're not getting exactly what you're looking for.
It's so we were at an event a couple of weeks ago, and because some of these problems, like you talk about, Rehgan, I mean, I think we could have said this 5 years ago, right? It's how do you get kind of that middle layer of an organization to make changes? At this event a few weeks ago, there is a growing sense that we are making progress, though, which was encouraging, right? Like, I think between, we've been doing efforts for a couple of years now in data literacy, right? We've been trying data governance now for some time. We're getting people who joined the organization with kind of this data-driven mindset. So I think there is some encouragement in this area that we data analytics people, we're making progress in organizations, right? There's a long ways to go, but maybe there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel there too.
Yeah, and I think it would be good to demystify what this data literacy thing is that we're talking about.
It is a fancy word. Let's go ahead and dig into it.
Yeah, I think part of it is literally a mental framing. It's why we learn math and never use, differential equations, Diffie-Q in
Diffie-Q?
our actual,
Yeah.
in our actual day-to-day, right? But we learn it because it actually teaches you the logic behind it. Proofs are really good skills to know because you can craft logic by understanding a mathematical proof. And I think when we're talking about AI, we have to get people to think more critically. And when we're talking about data, we have to get them to understand that this data represents a process that you do. And when you don't capture it appropriately, it's misrepresented in how we try to use it. And just getting people to understand that paradigm and how to engage with that and make improvements and participate in that, that's what we mean by data literacy or data acumen. And that's what I've seen a lot of organizations struggle with. It's, why do I care? You know, if I'm a bank teller, why do I care about data? And what should I be doing differently? And am I accountable and responsible for that? Like, these are the little things that these types of, data literacy programs address.
Right. Right. Let's press on. We could talk about reskilling for forever. I think the last point I would make on it, though, is reskilling is important because some jobs are absolutely going to change. And the people who have been doing those jobs have one really great bit of value, and that is they know the business. And that is an asset that can't be bought, it can't be trained, it can't be found. It can only be mined and exploited's a bad word, utilized from the folks who are inside of the organization. So let's give them some new skills, and let's put that knowledge to work. But let's talk about skills gap, because I think we're sort of bleeding into that as we think about prompt engineering, which is really what we're talking about in large part here. But how do we address some of these skills gap, Ben? When we get out in front of customers all the time, how are you seeing that dealt with effectively?
Well, I think there's a couple things, a couple of patterns I see for companies that are successful. One, there's sort of a pattern associated with this is just part, like they believe in continuous learning. So companies that already have structured learning programs with badging and that have acknowledgement of learning generally have a greater, success rate with upskilling generally, right? A structured training program with, both online and offline. So it's just part of the culture is one. Two, there is typically then models that talk about the kind of things you're trying to get done, but then also models of the competencies. I need to have this skill set. I need to have this skill set. I have this skill set. And then there's mapping of roles to skill sets, right? Because then it's and then there's a alignment of goals and objectives on a personal basis that said, you must learn this. You have to do this, right? By this time frame, right? So there's an alignment there. And then there's a component of, and you will use it this way, right? So people understand why they're learning it. That creates some outcome, but but you have to have some discipline in sort of like, what are you trying to get done? What capabilities do you have? What roles are in there? How do I map it? How do I make sure that there's a reward alignment associated with learning those things, and then I get to use it? Yeah. Right. So those are sort of some of the elements. So if companies don't have a map of competencies for data literacy, right, for their data scientists, you probably should start with it. If you don't have a map of competencies in your organization around what AI and industrialization means, you should probably create a model. You got to start with a model. Like as Rehgan said, having a mental model is a really good starting point, especially one that everyone agrees that's the mental model of the capabilities we need to have in making sure you articulate and document it. Like, so a question for folks here, like, do you have a competency matrix that's mapped to roles? Yes or no? If you don't, you probably should start there.
Probably a good place to start. And as you then get that model and you start to think about how we're going to staff to that, Rehgan, what are some strategies around where do I go in and train and upskill? Where do I go look for external talent, or when do I go to do that? What are some strategies around how to effectively then enable those things?
Yeah, I think external partners are great to get things started. They're like the tinder for the fire, right? They can come in, they can establish some standards, they can demonstrate what that looks like. I always call it like building that muscle memory. They come in, they help you build that muscle memory. Maybe it's like getting a personal trainer for the first couple of months, and then once you've got the routine down, you're like, great, I can go to the gym and do this on my own. And then you can start to like figure out what you want to bring in-house and who you want to partner with sustainably. So I think it depends on the organization's strategy on whether or not they want to bring that type of talent in-house or partner with other firms to do that. But I think to Ben's point too, if you don't have a comprehensive understanding of all of the different skills and all of the different capabilities that you're going to need and all the handoff points between all of those people, this is probably the most dependent system that a company has ever experienced. You got legal and risk and cyber and data and operations and, you know, your CFO, and like you got all of these people who are trying to do this together, which is really important. And so you have to figure out, like, what does that look like? How do we create a framework of those, you know, different roles and responsibilities? And then you can decide, okay, we're going to upskill this team here. We're going to augment this team here for now.
All right, well, let's start to head towards the end of our conversation and look towards the future. Brian, what are we seeing in trends in AI, in staffing, in analytics? What does your tea leaves say?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of mature analytics organizations have success, you know, attacking these problems in kind of pods, right? So, I mean, like Rehgan was saying, right? This is such an interdisciplinary area right now, right? Not only do you need, you know, if you think of kind of your pod, right? You know, a BA or a product manager, you know, an analyst, a data scientist, right? A machine learning engineer, right? All working together to tackle a problem, right? You've also got to bring in legal, right? And compliance and places, you know, places in the org like that. And probably the sooner you bring them in, again, the better, right? They like to be, that's one thing I've learned recently, like the legal team, they like to be brought in much, much earlier because they tend to get brought in at the end, right? So
I have opinions.
They do. And it's good to be friends with them, right?
It is.
You know, but bring them in early, right? They actually like that, and they want to, you know, they want to be your partner from the beginning. So I think that's where we're seeing a lot of success by people is just having that group of people with various skills being able to tackle these AI use cases. And I would say too, right? I think, again, I like Rehgan's point at the beginning, right? Most of the organizations out there, you don't need that, you know, close to 7-figure data scientist, right?
Yeah.
Like I think
there's a lot of space in the middle.
There's a lot, and I think a lot of, you know, your good data scientists and software engineers who have been doing machine learning over the last couple of years, like, you know, they've been working with NLP technologies, they've been working with similar things over the years, right? And this is a continued evolution of that. So I think they're well positioned to help out.
Yeah. So Ben, in the last few minutes here, you know, what do you think? We've talked a lot about challenges and reskilling and hiring. You know, does the future look any better? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, mankind is limitless in its potential, right? I mean, so the days of doom and gloom of resources just means you're not looking in the right places, and you're not looking to invest. Like you're not actually willing to do the work, right? When folks say I can't find the resources, that says I'm not willing to do the work, to look at underrepresented folks, to invest in my folks, in those because there's a lot of people that want to do work. And there's a lot of really smart people. Now, I think you have to think about where you look for them. And I think you need to think about investing in them. But I think, you know, I just think that, you know, if you need the close to 7-figure data scientists, there's a very small pool that have those high level skill sets, right?
Right. And the reality is there's probably a very small need in the grand scheme of things.
99.999% of us don't ever need that.
That's right. Well, Rehgan, right. as we here in the middle of the first week of March, Women's History Month, we're so grateful to have you here. I want to give you the last word on things. So sum up our conversation. Final thoughts, these challenges, these opportunities, and what's happening in the future.
Yeah, I think holistically about what skills need to exist in your organization. Start there, understand what that gap looks like. I think that's a great place to start. And then also make sure it's aligning with your strategy. Like I said, are you building engines? Are you assembling vehicles? using that as a context on how deep in the AI space are you going to build and bring in-house as a part of your core strategy. So really have alignment on that, have alignment on where you're at today and where you need to be from a people perspective. And I'd say finally too, think about community. I think one of the biggest misses companies have is that they aren't establishing this central and core community. I often hear in these meetings, great, where's everybody assembling? Where can I find out what's happening across the organization? What can I join? Are there lunch and learns? Are there, there's this community element too that you have to foster that's part of this culture change. And you got to get people together and you've got to coordinate and you have to have somebody responsible for doing that. So I'd say the biggest thing, think about capabilities, get a plan in place today, figure out who you can partner with to do this, who's seen it work well, and don't leave anybody behind.
That's such great advice. It's stuff that Ben has worked on hard here at Rackspace in helping get us to an 80% training level of AI fluency and literacy here. And that's all the way across from, folks at the lowest level of the organization to the CEO as well. So we're really pretty proud of that. Now, if you've enjoyed this conversation, folks, guess what? We're coming back next month. We're back here every month. It's like the first Wednesday. Today's Wednesday. Yeah, of every month. So we're back on April 3rd. And we are going to have a conversation about AI responsibility. How do we build responsible AI solutions? I'm going to tease you with a graphic. So producer Daniel, let's pop that up for 1 second. And then Ben, give us the highlights. I got 30 seconds for you. And this is the tease for next month.
If we think about what it takes to implement, industrialize AI at scale, 24 by 365 in a way that maximizes value and reduces risk, there's really 5 elements that we've distilled into very specific skill sets in this matrix. So we're going to talk about the element strategy innovation, your secure AI platform, your supply chain data, how you look at AI as a product, and your ops. And so those are some aspects we'll peel a little bit more. But this little graphic here is like when someone says, that means is you better be ready to have all these things in your organization.
That's right. Thanks, Daniel, for bringing that up. And Rehgan brought up and talked about a graphic that she uses often. So Rehgan, if people want to learn more about you or maybe contract with your organization, how do they find you?
Sure. Yeah. So I know I'm representing women in analytics today, so I'm obviously going to shout out the Data Connect conference in July. So definitely check us out. So womeninanalytics.com or dataconnectconf.com. You can find more information there. I'm also co-founder and CEO of Align AI, and we work with a lot of companies to do that. So you can check us out at getalignai.com.
I love that. And Brian, we know how to find you, fair.rackspace.com. But Brian, I did it again. International Institute of Analytics, how do we find you?
Yeah, you can go to ianalytics.com and find us. And we've got a lot of great material there around, building analytics and AI strategies, how to set up your organization, and kind of navigating that information economy that exists in all these big organizations.
Fantastic. All right, if you folks didn't write that down fast enough, we're going to end this with bringing up a set of QR codes that you can scan with your phone. We didn't want to bring it up earlier because you might navigate away, and we are glad that you stuck with us. We will be back April 3rd. We are on live at 9 a.m. Central Time, and we will dig into responsible AI and how to do that in your industrialized solutions. We may even have a special hyperscaler guest here. But that you'll have to stick around and pay attention for. So we're not sure if we're going to get them. Hopefully we will. Everyone, I hope you have a great day. It's been a delight to have this conversation. Again, we had 3 hours of content with 30 minutes to deliver it in. And we'll be back again on April 3rd with more for you. Have a great day, everyone. Daniel, bring up the QR codes if you wouldn't mind, sir. And we'll see you guys next month.